All right. My name is Rich Schmidt. We're here with Jeffrey Weissler. It's June 17th, 2024. We're at Pairings PDX in Portland. Thank you so much, Jeffrey, for joining us today. Which bottle of wine you should open when you're listening to your interview?
So, if we were to pair wine to this interview, what would that look like? So, you guys just gave me 3 adjectives to describe the interview. So, you gave me quirky, spiritual, and flowing. So, there's several ways to do this. I'm going to show you one way. So, quirky, I'm going to translate each of these. So, quirky means, on one level, it means not normal in a fun way. Okay? So, we're going to look for a wine that's not normal in a fun way. Spiritual means comes from a place of connection, owns that place of connection. So comes from a place of connection. And then owns that connection. And then flowing means harmonious movement from one thing to another. So it's going to be there needs to be some form of harmonious movement in the wine. So the wine can't be janky or angular. So that's going to be a big part. So we have not normal in a fun way. So that could also mean we need something playful and different. Comes from a place of connection, owns that connection. That could easily be something that fits the biodynamic realm. Okay, harmonious movement just has to have a flow through the wine that avoids any angulation. So not normal in a fun way. So we can go down different paths with this. So we could look at things of here we are in Oregon. So maybe we pick on grape varietals that are not in the normal flow. So, but they're fun, they're interesting, they're a little bit different. Then we need somebody with a holistic perspective. We could add a biodynamic aspect to that. And harmonious movement, there has to be a taste or flavor that makes you just feel like it's all connected. It's right here. So this is a wine called Murmuration from Johann Vineyards. So Johann is Demeter certified biodynamic, and they offer the world holistic farming with a lot of fun additional things as opposed to just a simple monoculture. So they really bring that aspect in. So it comes from a place of connection. It owns that connection. And then not normal in a fun way. We know what they're known for in Oregon. We're known for Pinot Noir and Pinot Gris. This is Cab Franc and 3 grape varietals that are historically known as Austrian grape varietals. So, and the harmonious movement, the wine has a very kind of like up arc and then sucks you in with the aromas, and then the palate continues to just express itself in what feels like a flowing way that integrates with the grapes. So there you go.
First question.
Yeah.
Why wine?
I'm going to blame this on mom and dad. When I was 12 and 13, there started being a bottle of wine on the dinner table every night. So being a proper New York child back in that day, my job was to taste everything on the table, including the wine. So that's kind of how it originally got started. And in high school, I think I was probably 16, maybe 15. Let's go with 16. I was over at my friend Owen's mom's house, and our mythology teacher in high school was a big wine guy. And so there were like half a dozen kids, and what happened was Owen's mom made this gourmet French meal, and Mr. Sorrentino brought a wine to go with each course. So that was the beginning of the Roosevelt High School Wine and Food Society, where 3 of us had the privilege of conning our moms once a month into making a dish and driving us over to Mr. Sorrentino's house. And the 4 of us sat there and enjoyed wine and food. And what happened was, you would do a salad, you'd do an entree, I would do a dessert, and we would just show up. And the next thing was that he would talk out loud how he would pair from his cellar that we were sitting in. Mm-hmm. So this was happening in my teens. Mm-hmm. So, and we did it, I think, 4 times, if I remember correctly. And he then sponsored a group through the American Institute of Foreign Study, which is part of the American Field Service, to France, Italy, and Spain. And it was the following summer, and it was groups of like 5 or 6 kids from each place. And so I got to go on this trip. So it was in the mornings, we had class at 9, 10, and 11, like 45-minute classes on topics. And then in the afternoon, we were tourists as a group. And so what was interesting to me was that was really getting outside the box I grew up in a lot of ways. And one was that I didn't really connect with the kids from New York or New Jersey. I connected with the kids from California and North Carolina and other areas in Arizona. And that got me going in an interesting way. And then during that trip, you spent 2 weeks in Paris and then 2 weeks in southern France and then a little traveling. The southern France part was in a village called Saint-Jean-de-Luz on the Atlantic Ocean in the Basque Country, and we got to spend an overnight with a French family. So I got to see a 8 or 10-year-old and each generation of 4 generations all having wine with just lunch and dinner and never at any other time. So I had kind of the wonderful gift of being able to experience wine as an integrated part of a culture in a way that I had never heard of or seen. So that was kind of exciting. And when I got back, I visited a cousin in California, and he was a wine guy. And Mark introduced me to some fun stuff. And a thing happened where I had a little accident, and I ended up down a driveway, and I ended up at a winery, and I learned a tasting trick that I teach to this day. And I call it the key to the castle. So what I do here today at Pairings is a creative outlet, to say the least. And I like to describe all the tastings that we do, or most of the tastings, as happening in Narnia. So with that in mind, you have to walk through the closet. And going through the closet is this tasting trick I came up with called the key to the castle. And so we have 3 different versions that I learned at this winery in California when I was like 19 years old. So at this point, I'm pretty enthralled with wine. And I was working in my dad's business after I did 2 years of college, and then I was working in my dad's business, and he was an old world typographer. And that was with the linotype machines. So these big metal things went into the back of these machines, melted down, and they typed out all this stuff. It was a craft. You had to go through a 7-year apprenticeship to become a typographer. These days, we have these things called computers, and it's a little bit of a different animal. But I did that for a while, and then there was some stuff where the unions were creating some issues, and technology was taking over. So my dad set me up in a satellite plant, and I created this non-union opportunity to compete with businesses to compete in a way so the clients he was losing, because of the way things were changing, I could grab. And I did that for a couple of years.
This is in New York?
This is in New York, yeah. And then I grew up in Yonkers. And then one rainy day, I decided I need a vacation. It had been like 4 years. I'm like, I gotta get out of here. And I was in this office with no windows, and just like the front door was like an old industrial building. There were no windows anywhere. Matter of fact, my recreation was we had this big warehouse space in the back, and I set up this huge golf net. And I would go slam balls into the net. That was my recreation. So we did this kind of thing for a while. And one day I'm just like, I got to get out of here. So it's like, okay, what's the craziest thing I could do? And I was going to go on a Windjammer cruise and couldn't quite work out the timing. And then this thing came up to go on a raft trip down the Colorado River. And that blew my mind, absolutely blew my mind. And so here I am doing this thing, holding onto the ropes and getting thrown around on the rapids and all this stuff. It was a 10-day trip. It was great. And I came out of it. When I got back to New York and I looked in the office, I stood in the doorway and I said, I can't do this anymore. And there was a really amazing book that I picked up, and I think it's still around. It's called What Color is Your Parachute? It's like a career book. And way back then, I don't know what's up these days, chapters, I think 4, 5, and 6 were a right brain, left brain approach where you figure out who you are and what you really bring to the table. And it was at a place called the John Bowles Center. And it was a week-long workshop. And you would write your life story at the time and then pull out these traits that really represent your heart, and what you're good at. And then you would use your life story to validate being good at these things by the experiences you wrote about yourself. So I came out of that, wow, I haven't thought of this in a long time. I came out of that, and mine was ECCA, E-C-C-A. So, and it's all just broken down to these words. You keep taking all these ideas, and you keep building them into just a single, and it means I am an enthusiastically contagious communicating achiever. Oh my God. So
Get out of town.
yeah, get out of town. So my job then was to take that and ask myself what I wanted to do. So, and I went to my life story and I came up with all these things. And I realized my favorite hobby that I could take and turn into something was wine. So I decided that was where I was going to try to go. And just a little previous to that, I had taken a couple of wine classes with a gentleman named Rory Callahan. And those were wonderful classes. He was actually a winemaker in Pennsylvania, of all crazy places. And I think he'd even gone to UC Davis, but he ended up doing something in Pennsylvania. And so then Rory partnered up with a couple of other people, and that was the beginning of an establishment in New York City at, I remember the address too, 144 West 55th Street. And that was the International Wine Center, which is still there today, which oddly these days is known for where W-Sets began, but not back in the day. So this was 1982, I think. So 1982, the International Wine Center, I show up, and they are the first place in, I believe in the United States, to have a Cruvinet, which lets people, try different wines. And the name of the wine bar was Tastings. And Mary Mulligan, eventually, and her partner, I forget his name, they were in an original group with me and a bunch of other people that was run by Terry Robards, who was the wine writer of the New York Times. So here was this guy, who didn't know much about wine, but liked all these qualities and concepts about wine. So, and definitely liked the community aspect. And I found that I was now in this group that you paid like whatever it was back then, $250 a year. And then you got at least one, and the tastings were like every Wednesday, I think. And you got like one free tasting a month at least. And so it might be the Sonoma Growers Association or the Italian Trade Commission. And then there would be fancier tastings and really fancy tastings. So I think within my first month or month and a half, I had a tasting of vertical and different vintages from Angelo Gaia from Barbaresco. I think the following month, Jean-Bernard Dalmas from Chateau Aubryon was there, and I was tasting through a dozen vintages of Chateau Aubryon. So here's this little nerdy New York guy, and there you go. So all of a sudden I'm learning, building those muscles and working out that way. And then in that tasting group, it was great because I befriended this one guy because he was the only other guy in the group who wasn't wearing a tie. So he's still my best friend today. So hi, Scott Hiller. And he just came out for our wedding last year, which was great. We hadn't seen each other in a long time. So that was fantastic. And we just became friends. We became good sports. We went to sports things together, we went skiing together, golfing together, wine together. So good buddies. And so that was fantastic. And I really, really loved that group. And I stayed in it for a while. And then I kind of left that. And going back to the other part of the story then is that John Bowles Center thing and the enthusiastically contagious communicating achiever. What am I going to do with that? So I lived in southern Westchester County. There was a rather large wine store there. And since my parents had gone to Italy those couple of years when I was a kid, they went to a store called Zacchi's. And that's where my dad would go and spend no more than $3.99 on a bottle and come home with a case of wine. And Jeffrey tried this and that. So we went ahead and we did this whole thing. That is pretty funny, isn't it? Yeah. So we did this whole thing. And I go in one day and I say, hi, I've been taking these classes. I'm really into wine. I've never been in the wine industry. I love If you had any kind of job, I would do anything. So they say, well, we don't have a job for you. There's nothing we can do. But if you want to come in to experience it, come in on Saturday and we'll show you the ropes. And at Zacky's, in those days, you would help people from, they walk in the door, hello, help them find wine, go get their wine, and then ring them out and take it to the car and refill the shelf. You're doing this whole thing. And so they showed me enough of the ropes, and then all of a sudden, I have somebody who asked for help. And he says, I'm looking for a Bordeaux. And I said, well, I don't know much, and I'm really honest about it. I said, I don't know much about Bordeaux, but I just took a short Bordeaux class with this guy, Rory Callahan, and one of the wines that was in that class, they have on the shelf here. And he says, okay, I'll take 3 cases of that and 3 cases of a white, the same price. Okay. Don Zachariah, at the end of the day, comes up, shakes my hand, and $100 bill in his hand, and says, come see me Monday. That's how I got started in the wine business. Oh my goodness. By that point, now you know why wine. There's other things too that really got me going. Oddly, I was a shy kid. I had a hard time looking at people in the eye. And the next thing that really happened for me was, there were 2 little other segues with wine. I wasn't at Zacky's very long. And I ended up at a store called D. Socklin, Wine Merchants in Manhattan. That was not my jam. That was a lot of cold calling in a way I didn't like. And then I ended up interviewing with a company called Mosswood. And at the time, Mosswood was Gerald Asher. Gerald Asher was the wine writer for Gourmet magazine. And Mosswood was a small company that was attached to Foremost McKesson, a big company. They handled a lot of liquor products. And Gerald was importing a bunch of stuff. And there was a Spanish sparkling wine. Oh no, not there. That was a different one. That was, Paul Chenot was a sparkling wine, Le Grand Chenot. Prieur Sancerre, which I still carry at the shop today, Paul Prieur Sancerre, that was a wine that was part of the Mosswood portfolio. So I met a gentleman named Rainier Van Tine, who was the general manager, and absolutely lovely angel of a man. And he tells me right out of the gate that we're not going to be able to hire you. You have no experience, you'll starve. But, here's the big but, he wanted to have lunch with me. So he took me out to a really great restaurant for lunch. 4 hours. 4 hours. So we don't end up, he at the end he reiterates, I'm sorry we can't hire you, but I really want to help you get something that works for you. They had an issue there where there was a problem, probably not worth talking about, but and most of the staff had been let go, everybody except the sales manager and then one other staff person. And so I get a call like 5 days later from Rainier Van Tine. Would you mind coming in and meeting my sales manager, Tom Lynch? Sure. So I go in, I meet Tom. Tom's completely different animal, totally awesome, really knowledgeable, really passionate from the ground up with wine in a really cool way. He says, we don't know if you can make a living. With the territory we can throw at you, you're probably going to make like $18,000, $19,000 a year. We're not set up financially to really pay you beyond what you earn. So we can give you like a $15,000 base, and you have to earn the commission and make it back. And Tom says to me something that I love, because I'm a huge baseball fan. Let's go Mets. Huge baseball. I know it's hard.
What a sad existence.
I know, and I'm a Met Jet Knick fan, so.
Oh man.
My good buddy Scott and me I'm actually going to a Jet game in Tennessee where he is. Whatever. So he says to me, baseball, if you hit 3 for 10, you're in the Hall of Fame. As a salesperson, as a new salesperson, you don't have to sell everybody. Go 3 for 10, you're in the Hall of Fame. That gave me so much permission to make mistakes and to totally mess up. And it was great. So either way, I was out doing the thing. And one of the things that really helped me with the shy kid is this connection with wine that I was getting to make with all these people that I didn't know. in positive ways because I'm selling products I'm excited about and I'm sharing the stories, is that I'm making eye contact. And all of a sudden I'm getting comfortable in the eye contact land. And then all this other stuff started opening up. The first year I earned $29,800. So that was my first year there. So the next year, I earned 42, I think. And then Mosswood unfortunately went out of business. And what happened was Gerald retired. And his friend, no, Gerald didn't retire, I'm sorry. His friend at Foremost McKesson retired. So they shut down the operation. And they took all the Mosswood products and they put them into a distribution company called Capital that was a liquor company. Didn't know anything about wine. So now my sales meetings turn into dirty jokes and how to manipulate people so you can get the free barbecue. I mean, it's so absurdly different. You know, I don't even know what to say about this. So there were like half a dozen of us on this team that ended up going over to that company. That didn't last real long. But in the middle of that, I got to sell a number of interesting people. I was now selling in Westchester County for that. And with Mosswood, I was living in Brooklyn, and I was selling in Brooklyn and Long Island. So now with Capital, I'm selling in Westchester County. So with a few accounts that people have an impossible time selling in New York that they threw at me. So I met an absolutely lovely gentleman I love to sell wine to named Henry Ponzio at Suburban Wines and Spirits in Yorktown Heights. So Henry had a big discount liquor store. That was his thing. And I would go in and sell him, and there'd always be reps there, so I'd always have to wait. And I got in the habit, because he had like these, like 4 little racks, maybe it was 6, I don't know, little racks that had better quality wine, like something, because a lot of the store was really liquor. Well, in New York you can sell wine and liquor. So it was a lot of like jug wine and a lot of not what I'd call fine wine. And then so he had these racks. So while I'm waiting, Jeffrey, being the enthusiastically contagious communicating achiever he is in his heart and soul, is now selling wines that they even have a hard time selling there to customers who are walking in while he's waiting in line. So in the middle of all this, I make friends with Henry. So we start doing nice business together. So I stayed with Capital, and Capital carried Sebastiani. And Sebastiani in big bottles, I was selling Henry now big drops. So that became a thing. And then I ended up leaving that job. I ended up having enough of wholesale. Well, I don't want to do wholesale anymore. Well, something happened, and there was a company called Paramount Brands, Mike Shaw and Ian Rabowski, who's still a good friend of mine. And they had a really interesting company that combined some really cool, awesome products and also had some bulk products which were making it super easy to make a living. So we went to, and they were in southern Westchester, and we went to lunch, and I wasn't convinced that I wanted to do this, but so I really pushed what I wanted to make it so I would have to do it pretty extreme. So I basically made a list of my top accounts in Westchester, including Henry, my top accounts in Brooklyn, my top accounts in Long Island, and a couple accounts in the city. So literally driving everywhere. But I wanted, if I was going to do this, I was going to sell the people I really liked, or the ones that were hard that I had somehow developed a relationship with. Because I knew I only had to hit 3 for 10. So I wasn't trying, I was throwing so much enthusiasm at it without having to get a sale. And people love that, you know. So you taste somebody on 8 wines and you don't care, you know, you've gotten 2 sales early in the day, so I don't need another sale. It made it really fun, and people liked the lack of pressure that way, yet the enthusiasm. So with Paramount, I came on board, and I think there were about 10 salespeople, maybe 11. I stayed there for 4 years, got my earnings up to 100 grand. And I think when I left, I was the number 2 salesman or number 2 or 3. But I was definitely a top salesperson there. And I was really wonderful relationship with Ian and Mike. And that was the first time I got to do wine travel. So I won a trip to Spain. I won a trip to Australia. The trip to Spain was fabulous. And one of the things was they sold Conde Diaz Borne and sherry. And I got to sell, and also Bodegas Montesillo in Rioja. So there were some really fun things that I got to do. And what I loved was when we went to Spain, everything was later. So they eat much later. And then they go dancing at midnight. And here I was sort of shy relationally and stuff, but outgoing when I'm comfortable. And what happened was I loved to dance, but I was not real good at asking anybody to dance with me. There you're not supposed to. You're just supposed to go out and boogie. And so I boogied. So I really got into just moving. One of the other things is I became a creative movement teacher at one point later. And just because I love what that creates in us and what it offers to people. And that's a really beautiful enhancer of connection. You know, and you don't have to speak the same language. You don't have to speak the same words or get caught in understanding, because there's something about song and dance and movement where there's this universal connection through breath that is just fabulous. And so that's been really powerful for me in my life. And Paramount, I told them one day, I had actually hooked up, and we're going to lay it all out on the table here. I was doing this wonderful work to connect in a deeper way, and I was working with somebody who would describe themselves as a channeler. So doing energy work and healing, and they would just help me tune into stuff and do this stuff, and they had a really beautiful metaphor that came in one of our sessions that I loved, and that was, wow, I don't know that I've expected to share this one, that back then, my heart wasn't pumping to its fullest. And that it was in this black box that was more like a cage in Pirates of the Caribbean that you would see down at the bottom of the ocean covered with all this stuff. And it was in a box in this cage, and my heart just didn't have enough room to really do its thing. So we did like 3 sessions where I did this dialogue with my heart about what it wanted, how it was doing, what's up, what it wanted. And what it told me ultimately was the word woods. And so I went in one day to Ian and Mike and I said, I love you guys. I love being here. And I'm leaving. I have to go hike in the woods. There you go. So
The heart wants what it wants.
the heart wants what it wants. The heart wants what it wants. And so I end up, having never hiked before, off I go with the money I've earned at Paramount to REI, and here I am getting outfitted for backpacking and putting a 50-pound pack on my back. And everybody's like, you know what? And this was right at the time of the first Gulf War. People were just going overseas for the first Gulf War.
It's the early 90s.
Yeah, so whenever that was. I think so. So I decided, I had cousins in Pennsylvania, who I also saw recently. It's very exciting, Mark and Karen and Janessa. And I ended up going to their house, and then they dropped me off the following day at Black Furnace State Park, and I hopped on the Appalachian Trail. The first day, it rained like a crazy. My boots were soaked. I was just a mess. I had brought all this stuff with me, including a crazy rattle, which I just loved. And it was crazy. It was this beaded thing from Polynesia. And so I ended up hiking, and I have this recording from my channeling friend about my heart thing to really help me along, and just my guide and support. And I made it like 8 miles on the first day, and my left hip was so sore. It was just so bad. And both my parents had actually had hip replacement surgery. So it was kind of like, the things start bubbling up. So I've got a journal, I'm writing, getting all this, trying to move stuff through. And there is a group of troubled kids from, I don't remember where in Pennsylvania, but these shelters that they have, they were staying in the next, there were 2 shelters right there, and they were staying some in the one I was in, but mostly in this one right next. And I get up in the next morning, and my tape player and my tape is gone. And obviously, I know these are really troubled kids, and I know that they, life's about the next generation as much as anything, and the next generation, So what choices do we make that support that? So I was like, okay, they needed it more than I did. That was a huge thing. So the next morning, my hip hurts so much, I literally can't just lift my leg like that. So instead of getting back on the trail, I am hanging out. And I had a book with me. And what's interesting about this, and this will dovetail to something later, is as a kid, I was one of those kids that would read page 1, had to read it 3 times to figure out what was on the page. And never really got help for that. And so as a result, I really never read books. Probably until this last year, I'd say I've only read like 6 books cover to cover. And so I had a book with me. It was called The Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman. Never have I ever. I mean, so amazing. So I literally put my backpack on at some point, got on the trail. I don't think I walked 300 yards. I literally unclipped it, let it fall off my back, and just leaned against my pack on the side of the trail and sat there for like 3 hours reading the book. That night, I ended up going a total of about a mile that day. Didn't make it to a shelter. I actually just set up a little tent I had a tent, set up a little tent for myself in the woods right there, and listened to the sounds, which scared the hell out of me that first night. And then in the morning, I was fine. And then felt better. And I think I did 2 or 3 miles the next day. Stopped again, I think twice. Read like another 50 pages. Was now really getting blown away by this book and the spirit of the book. And it really represented courage to be yourself, willingness to let your cultural programming not tell you who and what you are and how things should be. And in my journaling, and then a day later, I think it was that next night, I let my rattle go. I had a fork, spoon, and knife. I just kept the spoon. It was like anything that was not for an emergency or I needed every single day, gave it away, let it go. And I realized that, and my boots are soaked the entire time, from literally from the afternoon I got on the trail all the way through, my boots are soaked. So I realized what I had believed makes me happy isn't what actually makes me happy. Boy, does that open a set of doors. It's like, wow, this is crazy. This is crazy. Here I am out here. I don't know when I've ever been this happy. I'm soaked. My boots are never going to dry out. This is crazy. So, wow, really interesting. And then, I've never been like a military guy or anything, but here I am connecting with all these guys on the trail that I'm running into, who are out for a little bit of this and that before they go off to the Gulf War. And it was just fascinating. It was really fascinating. Even the bugs in the east, in the Appalachian Trail in the summer, you literally will have like 100 things going like that in front of your face for most of the time. And it's just not what one thinks of as joy. But what you believe, you receive, I guess, huh? So if you change your perspective, what becomes possible? So I just want to shift to the one other book that I've read that is my other favorite, most powerful book, which is called Ishmael. Have you heard of it?
No, I don't think I have.
All right. The author's name is Daniel Quinn. So the thing on the back cover says, teacher teacher seeks pupil, must have an earnest desire to save the world, apply in person. So this guy goes to this address, and once he's there, he goes inside this room and there's nobody in the room. And then there's a window in that room that goes into another room. And in that other room is a gorilla. And the book is the dialogue between this guy and that gorilla. And it is absolutely about cultural programming, and why do we believe the things that we believe? I think the thing about that movie, Super Size Me, that was so great is it showed when we listen to the same thing over and over and over again, we start to believe it is real. Look at whatever news outlet, if somebody watches or listens to news, what does that create? We're not living in the United States as one community, one family. We're living as separate things. And it doesn't have to be that way. We've chosen it. We've believed things and we've chosen it. So what if I chose something else? So, interesting. So back to the wine thing. So I'm on the Appalachian Trail, and I did 10 days, and then I was kind of done. I come out in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, but I did 80 miles. And I read the book, and I'm like ready for the next thing. And I'm like, I want to hike more. I want to do this, but I just want to go somewhere where I can spend 3 nights that's like community oriented and dry and all. What's the deal with this? So, and it also made me think about my AFS time, American Institute of Foreign Study, American Field Service time that I did, and the community aspect. So I stayed at a youth hostel in Harpers Ferry, and a lot of the hostels have a minimum, but there's a few that don't. And so I found one in Flagstaff, Arizona. So I call the hostel, and there is a woman named Shelley who answers the phone, and I say, hey, I'm out with a backpack. I want somewhere I can come and spend over 3 nights. And she said, well, we don't have a limit here. You can stay as long as you want. I'm like, oh, okay. I said, have you heard of a place called Sedona? Because Sedona had gotten on my radar. And she said, Sedona? I'm going to Sedona in 10 days. I love Sedona. And this is what she says. And I said, right out of my mouth, next line, do you want to tag along? So ultimately, I came to Portland the first time because I chased Shelley here later. That's how I got to Portland for the first time. So this is a crazy story. This is a wine story. It's a life story. It's a life story. This is my story. It's my story.
It's a beautiful story.
Thank you. Thank you. It is kind of wild. I'm going to appreciate hearing this too. So I end up booking a train, Amtrak, to Chicago and then to Flagstaff. And next thing I know, I'm with Shelley, and we have this amazing romance thing where, for me, growing up, my relationship with my parents was really not great. And there wasn't a lot of soft, warm, fuzzy, lovey there. Like I said, I had a hard time looking at people. And so Shelley is where I'm going to say my relationship with the softer side of life got to see something different in a woman than I had seen before. And that really was a profoundly changing relationship for me. Didn't last very long and had lots of flavors, but it was a really profoundly altering thing for me. And it also reinforced the magic of nature for me. Well, when we were in Sedona for a few days, and there was one point we were hiking a place called Boynton Canyon, and we went way past where you were supposed to, past what's called a vortex, and climbed up on the side of this wall. And here we are in Arizona, and we're looking back at this thing that's all green. It's crazy. And then we came out, and I remember we were singing Follow Your Heart. We're just singing Follow Your Heart, doing this whole thing. And we were just singing. And that night was the most amazing night. The sky literally was split down the middle, and one side was this gorgeous stars, and the other side was a dry thunder and lightning storm. It's just incredible. And again, for a guy, I totally think of myself as spiritual but not religious, even though I was brought up Jewish. And nature became my church. Nature became my synagogue. Nature became my vehicle of connection. My reminder of tuning in and connecting. And that was incredible. between that Grand Canyon raft trip and the time I spent on the Appalachian Trail, and then Sedona, and then I became more of a backpacker after that. So things happened, continued the journey, and then one rainy day I am exploring. I go back to my dad died. No, I ended up moving to, I ended up going to massage school. That's what happened. Wow. Okay. So I'm in Portland. That's right. I'm in Portland with Shelly. We had broken up. I decided I wanted to stay in Portland long enough to experience Portland. I had gotten into, I'd gotten into this earlier. So back into the channeling time, I had really gotten into this thing called numerology. So metaphysical arts using numbers. And I had done all these different things when I had spent some time really studying books. And I loved that I would do these simple readings that I learned in a program for people, and it would just be right more often than not. It wasn't new information for most people. It just affirmed what you already know about yourself. So it's kind of like a little bit of a confidence booster or a friend that just kind of gives you a little push to kind of be yourself or do what you love. So the numerology thing, I got into that big time. And when I came to, when I was in Portland, I was doing readings in a metaphysical bookstore here in town when they did these events, these big events. And I wanted to get a license to touch. I wasn't interested in becoming a massage therapist, but I'd start doing a reading with somebody and I wanted to just put my hand on their arm or their hand or their neck or something like that. And that's not legal. So one way to make that legal was to become a massage therapist. So I took an anatomy and physiology course here. Talk about following your one step leads to another, just kind of seeing where the creek leads. And imagine just cutting yourself loose enough to live like that for a while is wild. And so I ended up taking this anatomy and physiology course, and I loved it, but the massage school didn't really resonate for me. And I looked online and I found this massage school, the New Mexico School of Natural Therapeutics in Albuquerque, New Mexico, that really hit me as what I wanted to do. And the problem was the course was starting in 48 hours, and it was a 6-month program. So I basically, and I was $2,500 short. So what I said is, how late can I be there to still be let in the program? And they said 5 days, 6 days, 5 days. So I immediately put it up, did a garage sale, everything came outside, I put prices I needed on stuff. People came and said, I'd have this sweater, and I was selling pretty much everything. I had moved all my stuff in a Chevy Suburban out here. So I had a sweater that I had $25 on, and people would be like, well, I'll give you $5 for it. I say, I need $2,500 for massage school within 48 hours. Here's $50. I raised, I think, $2,800. Oh my goodness, so crazy. So guess what? Off I go. Hello, Albuquerque. Turns out I have cousins in Albuquerque. Land at their house, stay with them for the first 2 months. Hadn't seen them. I don't know if I had ever seen them. I think once, maybe, when I was a little kid. Somebody's bar mitzvah or something. Anyway, Daniel and his family, and they were great. They just welcomed me in. And I was able to land and get in the program and do that massage program. And I nerded out on all those things that I love that were the non-wine. I also got 100% completely addicted to green chili. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner when you're there, it doesn't matter what you order. If you go to a New Mexican restaurant, only thing that matters is whether you have green or red, period. I went to massage school, finished massage school, did the 6 months, it was great. Found a job teaching in doing massage in Las Vegas, New Mexico. So to get your license, you have to be under a certified massage therapist for a period of time in New Mexico. And not the friendliest people I was working for, very businessy and very strange. But I got this job. So I went there and I did that. And Las Vegas, New Mexico was the last stop on the railroad for many years. little bad news story. The main distribution Fort Union for the entire Southwest Territory, when we were doing really horrible things to the Native American population, was based right outside of town. And that area, these mercantile folks came from back east, and it created this really expanded situation there, and it became the third largest collection of Victorian housing west of the Mississippi. Las Vegas, New Mexico. 15,000 people 100 years ago, 15,000 people today. So the Dalton brothers were big there. You know, there was lots of wild, Wild West stuff going on. And really good green chili. So I'm doing my thing, and I need a little more money. I'm not making much doing this thing, and I'm doing insurance patients, you know, because that's what this clinic does, and it's not my jam. You know, it's like they don't even really want the massage. And so I end up going into this real estate place one day and just looking around just curiously because I saw something in the window, and Patty, I don't remember her last name, really cool, has a bar called Joe's Ringside. Patty and Yolanda opened this bar, Joe's Ringside, in Las Vegas, New Mexico. And kind of a cowboy type bar. And one thing led to another, and we just started yakking, and next thing I know, I'm saying, well, you know, I'm a wine guy. Haven't done anything in wine for a long time. I could teach classes in your space and, you know, or do events and help with a little bit here and there. And there is a really interesting international mix in this town because the Arm & Hammer World College is there, which it's this building called Montezuma's Castle. It was one of Teddy Roosevelt's favorite resorts. And it's senior year high school, first year college. It's like 200 students from like 50 countries. Mm-hmm. And so the teachers are kind of not the normal person in terms of interests that are in Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. And so we start doing this thing over at the Ringside, and I promote it, the tasting at the college, and I get like 20 people. And all of a sudden, I sell wine. You know, I have an interest in wine. So there is no wine in town. So for me to do wine, I'm driving an hour to Santa Fe and hooking up with wholesalers and bringing the wine to town. So meanwhile, the woman who is one of the food writers, and I forget her name right now, for the Albuquerque Journal, happens to live, I think, in a place called Sapeo, which is right outside of Las Vegas. She catches wind of this. She writes it up in the Albuquerque Journal. So all of a sudden, there's this thing. Now, this continues to build, and Patty and Yolanda decided to build a space in Joe's Ringside and let me build a small wine shop in there. So now we're building a wine shop, and now I'm going to Santa Fe and picking up wine from like 4 wholesalers. And what I'm doing is I got on a radio show in town, and the next thing you know, I have a couple hundred people who know me as Jeff, and I have 3,000 or 4,000 in town who know me as, hey, wine guy. So this whole thing is going on, and it's just wild. It's almost too wild for words. It was so fun. So we started this thing that said, and we focused first on beer. And we started this thing that I went around the world in 50 beers at Joe's Ringside. And we had this woman who was a beautiful artist who created these fabulous t-shirts. And we just got people trying all kinds of new fun stuff. We even did a beer versus wine tasting where we took a dozen beers, and for each beer we created a parallel partner or relationship wine in the wine world. So different ways of getting creative to turning people onto wine. So then a couple of things happen, and a mysterious thing happens, and my dad passes away. And actually what happened was I had seen a digging going on in the ground. My dad had been going through some illness stuff, but he wasn't like supposed to be in danger. And when I saw this thing, they were doing a phone line thing or a water line thing, a couple of things all at the same time. And they had they were digging this thing that looked like a grave. And I just called back east, and my dad was dying, just like that. And so I just dropped everything and went back to New York. And I never had a close relationship with my mom, so I considered this now a new opportunity to work on that. Mm-hmm. And I got a job working for wholesalers. Again, I worked for a couple different wholesalers, found a couple of nice homes, you know, a couple places to live, did all that for a few years, went back to selling Henry. Did that for a while, then I left again. Then I end up back on the West Coast, and I want to go just explore wineries. I just want to go explore wineries. So I go to Paso Robles. Back then, I think there were like 39 wineries. I went to every single one. My favorite back in that day was Dark Star, and went to every single one. I'm sending Henry Ponzio at Suburban Wines reports. What's exciting, and all the new fun things. And I keep going on this trip. I'm going to go back to one thing with Henry. When I worked at Paramount, a really great thing happened. Henry had something called the Upper Westchester Wine Society, and he had me come and speak for that group. And there were like 30, 35 people. I had never spoken in front of a group before. And I have written out all these notes and on cards, and I'm so nervous, like not slightly nervous, so nervous. And I take the first wine and I go, oh, no. I'm trying to read the cards. I can't get my brain to get the words that are on the card to come out of my mouth. So I pick up the first wine, and I go like that, and 3 ounces of wine are on my shirt and tie. The next line out of my mouth is, the only way you can tell how much someone's into wine is by how much they have on their clothes. And public speaking has been my favorite thing since. So that was with Henry back in the Paramount days. So now, fast forwarding, I'm back on the West Coast. So I did Paso, and that was great. And then I did a bunch of stuff in Sonoma. And then I just busted a move, and I went out to the Okanagan. And I did every winery there. And then I end up on, for a little R&R checking stuff out, I'm on Vancouver Island in the city of Victoria. And I'm calling Henry with my notes from my Okanagan experience. And he says to me, his discount liquor store, he says, I'm thinking about investing a lot of money in the business and really transforming the business and turning it from a discount liquor store where in these penny saver ads, the 5 stores compete for the cheapest nickel, into a fine wine shop. Would you be interested in coming back and helping me set that up? So I'm like, a consultant? I can do that. Back to New York. So that was 1998. And I ended up working out a deal with Henry, and I worked with Henry from 1998 to 2004. And he had given me, my salary was based on profit, at a percentage of profit. So here was a base salary that I was okay with, that we agreed on. And then so at that time, he figured out a percentage of profit that would equal that. So if I would grow the store, then I got more money. No extra burden on him. At one point, he finally said to me, after I think 4 years, I was with him for 6 years. After 4 years, I think he said, we can't do this anymore. You're making more than me. And so, or something to that extreme. Kind of obviously not, but you get the idea. And it started out where I was just going to all these tastings and doing all this stuff, and we had it worked into my job. It was amazing. As long as I hit the numbers he wanted, talk about creating work outside the box. As long as I created the numbers I wanted, I would get 8 weeks vacation a year and be able to get business trips paid, wine trips paid for too. But I had to hit certain numbers because that was the deal. Because based on the number I was getting in math, not from what was good for him to pay, but for what I felt valued at, I felt it was worth 10 months a year. So interesting how you can play this, right? And ultimately, however we compromised or worked it out, we worked it out. And then at some point, Henry said, instead of this salary, I'm going to give you a small percentage of the business when I sell. And I completely trust Henry. Henry's like, lover, friend, the best. So, and we worked really well off each other. We were really different. And what was so great was that in addition to that, over time, he became a little more like me and I became a little more like him. So I got a little more in my business side and he got a little more in the creative side. Mm-hmm. So it really was a lovely, synchronistic pairing. I don't know that you can find somebody when you put out an ad looking for somebody like that. It was just one of those things where the universe said, okay, your thoughts, feelings, and actions are all in line like this. Yours are here, boom. And you have this thing. You have this relationship. So I taught tons of classes with Henry. We did amazing things. We went to big trips in Italy, lots of amazing things. And one of the things was community. What we created was almost like a wine amusement park. It was pure, it was education made fun for that market, where community and heart were brought to the front. So what was there before, the staff that Henry had, who were all lovely people, hated me because I was trying to get them to do things that were no longer a discount liquor store, but are now trying to attract fine wine customers. And then people wanting like the cherries, because we were buying a lot of wine. We had $1 million in inventory. So we're buying a lot of wine. So because of that, you get some cherries, but I wasn't the guy. I would never give like I get 6 bottles of this. You can't have that. If you're a good customer and buy a lot of stuff, you get 1. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I did. And that brought us actually more people. And then I got really precious about this. And then in one newsletter, which I had started too, there's the story of Jeff's stash. Be careful when you touch Jeff's stash, except it's not his wine. So really funny. But it was great to teach classes and use classes as a way to taste all the things I wanted to. Mm-hmm. So that's what I would do. I would use customer dollars to do that. And one really, really powerful thing that happened for me at Suburban was this whole idea of organic. So here we are, a wine shop with 3,000 wines. And there's only 2 sections in that shop that don't meet, I call it a 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10 means if I give you this wine and that wine is $25 a bottle, if you wish you hadn't bought it, then it's less than a 7 out of 10. I want everything I sell you ultimately to be an 8 out of 10. Means I sold it to you, you tried it, you liked it, you came back and bought it again. Mm-hmm. Okay? So I couldn't find anything that was a 7 out of 10 that was organic. It made no sense to me. Why is organic? Organic food is great. Mm-hmm. Why is organic wine not? What's the disconnect? And that was a real big piece for me. And then the other section that wasn't great back then was New York. But you carry these things. I remember a wholesaler sent me 36 bottles, wholesaler in New Jersey, sent me 36 bottles that were certified organic. 4. 4! Got a 7 out of 10. That's insanity. What's wrong with this? Why is organic? What's the problem? Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was just odd. Needed to work on that. Mm-hmm. So there was also one tasting that I did that was great. So we had some really high-end, Cab Bordeaux blend type lovers. And we did an event at a place called the Peter Pratt's Inn, which if you're ever in that area, great restaurant. Jonathan is awesome. And he does a lot of game meats and stuff like that. So the tasting we did, I think, was like 9 wines. And they were all like the heavy hitters from Napa. So it was Harlan, Bryant, we didn't have Screaming Eagle, but Colgan, that whole group. And then there was Arajo and Quintessa. And we did it as a blind tasting, all 9 wines. I think we had 11 people. And everybody tasted through all the wines. Everybody voted on their first, second, third favorites. My favorite was Arajo. My number 2 was Quintessa. Nobody else had either of those in their top 3. The reason was those 2 were no yeast added winemaking. And they also had something else going on, which I didn't know at the time. So they were no yeast added winemaking, which by adding yeast, you raise the alcohol level. It helps you create a more consistent product. You don't add yeast, you're playing in the land of Wild Thing, You Make My Heart Sing, thank you for being the real thing. The magic is in the mystery. It's not the same deal. So different story. So these wines, Colgan, Bryant, they're big, monstrous wines that you put on the wall as pieces of art. They take over the room. Arajo and Quintessa were mystery. It's like, what's going on? Who are you? Where are you? So I was like, that's what intrigued me. So when I explained that to the group, that you couldn't figure them out, that they reminded me of a good book or story where you surrender yourself to the book, but you have no idea where the magic is. And it's never in the beginning. So how's that wine going to unfold in 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever hours? I don't know. What if I don't know? And I go into that with the sense of wonder of a kid. So that became an interesting thing. And I said this kind of stuff to the group, and they were like, oh yeah, I really like this wine. So yeah, that's really interesting. So later what I found out, what those two wines shared was something called biodynamic farming, biodynamie. And the first time I had heard of that was at a tasting I had done before from a producer, and I think the way you pronounce it is Zinumbrecht. But Zinumbrecht, as we like to say here, is an Alsatian producer that breaks they break the paradigm, they break the mold of what normal Alsatian wine is. They don't stand in the box. They are like out of the box Alsatian wines. And so when I went to hear Olivier speak, he said the word biodynamie about his wines. And I was like, what's that? And then I also heard this idea of not adding yeast to fermentation. I was like, what was that? So that really got me interested and inspired. And then later on, I had a friend do something for me. He asked me to do it because we were talking about this, and he said, what are your 20 favorite wines right now? If I give you 20 bottles for free, no price on anything, what are they? 18 of the 20 were no yeast added winemaking. What's that about? So that's what got me curious there. So in 2004, I left suburban. My mom moved to Florida. My dad had passed away. My mom moved to Florida. I moved her, and with that election in 2004, I decided, and I was actually at Broward County headquarters, I wasn't willing to stay American. I didn't know what that meant, but I moved my mom to Florida, and then I ended up, and this is something else crazy I got into. This is an interesting wine interview. Called a raw food detox center. And it's a cleansing program that's very, very simple. And the woman who started it had cured herself, Ann Wigmore, had cured herself of stage 4 colon cancer through this program. And there are 3 other centers that are now happening in the United States that were built out of that. They don't advertise any of them because the medical community would throw too much money against them. So it's all just word of mouth. But they're an interesting option. And so I end up at this place, went for 2 weeks, ended up staying for 5. It's in Aguadilla, Puerto Rico. Ended up staying for 5. Between week 4 and week 5, I decided 50 million people voted the same way I did. I'm willing to be American. I'm going back to America. So I made up a list of 5 things I wanted in my life. We're giving you the whole deal here of 5 things I wanted in my life. We will get to the shop too, right?
I can't even wait.
All right. So I ended up the 5 things I wanted in my life were, I wanted organic to be the norm, not the exception. I wanted to know my farmer. I wanted nature to be in my life every day, because that was my grounding. I wanted spirituality to be really strong without religious dogma getting in the way. And the last thing was, if the economy got mushigas, that there would be values of people that I really connected with often that could build community in a way that resonated in my heart. And so I spent the next 6 weeks traveling around the United States, and between Mendocino, California and Vancouver, BC, within 100 miles of coast was where I was headed. So that was the game. So I ended up coming out here again and looking around. And when I was at Suburban, I had met Don Heistman from PDX Wines in Vin, Italy. I had met him multiple times and connected, and I knew he was out here. And then I met a woman named Cheryl Garvey, who now in Ashland, who was running a restaurant in Eugene, and had a really good connection. I decided, I'm doing Oregon. At that point in my mind, I was doing Eugene. And so I reached out to Don and said, hey, Don, you got a job? And we had lunch actually at Nostrana. And basically, again, he said to me, well, you're going to go broke. You're talking about, he didn't have any major territories. What he had for me was Bend and Ashland. And Bend was more conservative than I wanted, but that was my base, and that's where most of the business was. Ashland, as I got to discover, fabulous. Just not as much business. And the distributors don't even bring wine down there really well. So So I end up taking that job, and that was in January of 2006. And I started like most of my time in Bend, and then maybe every other week for like 4 days in Ashland area. And by the end of the year, I gave up Bend completely and moved to Ashland full time. I had found places to live in both. The community in Ashland was right here. Never have I ever with tribe. That was the closest thing to tribe I've encountered. And I was absolutely in love, and that's where I met my wife. And we've been together over 15 years. We just got married last September. Bought a house 4 years ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Gonna make me cry now. Yeah, little tears. And she, at one point, wanted to leave town, and that's when we left and came up north, and a whole series of things happened. But in Ashland, I worked for Don for a while, and then it wasn't my thing anymore. I wasn't earning enough money and different stuff. And I ended up taking all this work I had done while studying in between about biodynamic, holistic, and organic and all this stuff, and figured out what went wrong with organic and how I could work on that. And so I came up with a concept called conscious wine. And conscious wine was 4 qualities: organic, sustainable, vital, quality. And it became organic grape growing only, 20% of the land in biodiversity, no yeast added winemaking, equaling wines that don't suck. And that was the game plan. And because the organic wines were not necessarily interesting, so that's a whole nother story. That's a different video. So it became really powerful for me to vet wineries. I was looking for American wineries because I knew of so many European wineries, so I was looking for American wineries. So I found a business partner for this because I was out of money. I found a business partner named Vinny Licio, and Vinny was a wonderful customer at Suburban Wines, and that's how we connected. And he decided to support this. So I did this for 6 years, and we tried to do this, I think 6 years total. I think he and I maybe were together for 4, and possibly a little longer. And we ultimately vetted 53 wineries for those qualities. So what we would do is, any winery that met those qualities, I would go with my video camera and interview stick, and I went to these wineries and I asked them, now that you do this, these basic things, what are your practices? So we came up with 12 practices that were the 12 most common practices at these wineries, like animals on the farm, recycling all water, compost, good worker policy. There were all these really cool things. And we had a really cool website. We just never, Vinny and I were so different, both great people, just really different. We could never figure out how to make money together and how to put it together. So it went to a point of kind of just not good for either of us anymore. And one day, basically broke, Vinny said to me, why don't you do a wine store? And I'm like, I don't know. And he was just trying to help me at that point, And so what happens next is my wife and I have a bunch of trauma. Life goes through phases, losing parents, blah, blah, blah. And I'm in a coffee shop. I'm in Woodlawn Coffee. I love these pads that are like this big. And life had gotten so pent up that I just was like writing on a pen, just like, I think I broke 4 pens before I stopped just breaking the pens. I was going like that, and on the pads, just black. I had done pure black. And then finally what happened was a couple words came out of me. And the first word, which we don't have to use here, was a 4-letter word that starts with F. And it was the entire page of that word. And then I ripped that, and I just ripped it. I could totally feel it. I totally ripped it. And then on the next page, I started again, and I wrote, and this time I will use that word, I wrote, what the fuck, I'm not getting out of this alive, I'm opening a wine shop. I found this space 48 hours later. I went to meet a financial planner who was a friend through a networking group I had gone to, who was just somebody randomly talking to somebody. And she did 2 meetings with me, and she told me, you can't open a wine shop and you need to stop eating organic produce now. So obviously I didn't do that either. Disregarded all of her advice. I did a GoFundMe, and I got like $8,000. Henry gifted me a little bit of money. A couple of people helped us get out of the gate. A number of customers from Suburban helped me. And next thing we know, I think I had accumulated $16,000 to kind of get the shop open. It almost all got taken by, we have something over there called Izzy, the Inventory Annihilator, which is the grease trap for a place that doesn't do food. What the city put me through was shocking, and how they kept that open for a few months. It was really pure insanity. But we eventually got there, and the networking group I did helped a lot. And my wife Megan helped design this look. So originally, the look in here was the chalkboard wall had all kinds of stuff like my wine and food pairing world, and how I did all that was written on here. There was a lot of good stuff, and the racks were in different things. And we didn't know what to call it. I didn't know what to call it. So I originally wanted to call it Wonder Wines, because I wanted it to inspire the sense of wonder, but I didn't like the name enough to use it as a business name. But we definitely had Megan design, as a theater set designer, design the colors and the looks in here to be Wonder Wines. And that was our game plan. Ultimately, I had done a lot of food and wine pairing in the past, and had worked on creating some fun stuff. One of the best things I did when I lived in Ashland and I was doing conscious wine, a good friend of mine down there, Beverly McKenzie, who now lives here, and she's going to come up in this story in a minute. Beverly and I did wine and food pairings that we did as videos that we used on the Conscious Wine website at a restaurant called Chateau Lynn. That was lovely, and a French restaurant. And one of the videos we did was called Wine Meets Lemon, a very short one. At Chateau Lynn, we were doing something called the menu and the wine list, where we would actually teach people how to put those two things together. So the first thing was this little tasting trick called Wine Meets Lemon. So the idea is fat, acid, and salt. If you make a dish that doesn't taste great, just balance out those 3 and you got a home run. So 90% of the time plus. And you can think about basic things like lemon and fish. Like, if you didn't have lemon and you have a piece of fish, there's a chance you might not even have the fish. So they really are partners, and pairings are an interesting dynamic. So if wine is meant to be an ingredient, how does it interact with fat, acid, and salt? So what we did is try a Sancerre on its own. Beverly and I doing our thing on camera. And then we took a slice of lemon, and tried the acidity, and then tried the wine again, and talked about how it changed. So that is one of the main foundations for my food and wine pairing class. So I these days I call it POP, the power of pairings. So it's kind of like, you want to pop? So it's really fun to create those transformational pops. That's what I love about this business these days. It's like my big why that I do this is to create those pops, those transformational experiences for people, and expand how we look at things, get us out of our normal way of looking at things. So through things that we might be using already, So Beverly was a good friend, and then she moved up here, and she's a major part of how the pairings here got created. So here's the story. So a little over 11 years ago, or about 11 years ago, there were 2 young ladies sitting in here, and they said, was The Princess Bride your favorite movie? And my response was, no, I've never seen it. And that was a flabbergasted version of, no, I've never seen it. Her response to, no, I've never seen it. So Jessica comes up to the register, and a few minutes later, hand on hip, and says, we're bringing you the movie. We're not coming back until you watch the movie. She was so insulted, because she was like, this place looks like that whole spirit. How could you not know The Princess Bride? I think it was probably during my Appalachian Trail time or something, where I just kind of had this gap. Something. Anyway, massage school. and pick your segue. Numerology.
We're out living life somewhere.
Living life somewhere. So, then the movie is sitting on the mantle of a fireplace where we're living in North Portland, and Beverly comes over and sees the movie on the mantle and says, "I love that movie." I said, "I've never seen it." Flabbergasted. The next thing that shows up is, because Beverly is a wholesaler, works for handcrafted wines, shows up, bottle of wine, boom, on the mantle next to the movie. "When you watch that, drink this." Fine, Jewish guilt is now taken over, whatever. So now I'm like, okay. So we didn't even have a proper player. I had to figure out how to get a proper player. So I think we had one in storage, or something was broken or something, I don't remember. Anyway, so finally, pop the movie in the player, open the bottle of wine, smell the wine. The wine is called Rio Favara Spaccaforno, means broken oven Sicilian wine made of Nero d'Avola. Okay, dark red. So smell the wine, brambly, rich, fruit, just spice, yummy, intoxicating, inviting, initial palate, nice texture, more of this big voluptuous edge, then kind of leans out a little bit. Then all of a sudden the tannin and the acid kind of rip your teeth and mouth to shreds, and you're just like, oh my God, get the heck out of here. And then just when you're ready to kick it in the walla, the next thing you know, it bursts back all this luscious, sexy fruit and makes you just want to hang out more. Just like freaking Vizzini in the movie. And that's what started all of our nerdy pairings. So the event we did, and we actually, for the Christmas that year, even though not really supposed to, we actually played The Princess Bride in here and set up seats. I think we paired wines to half a dozen lines in the movie. Each wine was paired to a movie. As You Wish, rolling down the hill, was a Lambrusco, because it's magic in the bottle that you don't expect, so stuff like that. So we kind of did this game, and it was we need to do more of this, And then little by little, racks started showing up. Next thing you know, we're pairing wines to different breeds of cats and dogs. Then we're pairing wines to numerology. And then I started to get into what I call conceptual astrology. I don't have a real name for it, but it's very interesting. And there's an astrology rack back here. And the handouts are fantastic. I'm actually writing a wine and astrology book. So that's how it kind of came together and kept going. So the thing was, though, and I've been a lot like this with conscious wine, it's the more I surrender into it, especially thoughts, feeling, and actions together, the more things just evolve out. Conscious wine was not originally organic, sustainable, vital quality. It was these long sentences that made their way down to one sentence that eventually turned into 4 words. My food and wine pairing class has been a class that I've been teaching for over 9 years, and it's evolved into this thing that is crazy. I can't describe to you how I came up with this, but it is so empowering on so many levels, whether you're a beginner or an expert. And it just makes it fun and approachable and easy to digest and share and practice. So it was what's the language of pairings? What's the language of pairings? And all I knew was the language of wine, as I knew it, separated people in my perspective. It didn't make wine fun and approachable. It intimidated the mass of wine drinkers to the point where they find X number of wines they're comfortable with and they live in that box. It's insanity. So I was wrapped up in that, and I was also very aware that taste buds take up to 4 seconds to react. So when people just swallow something straight down, you don't taste a lot. When you eat your food and you have a cold, you don't get much, right? So the air has to come in while you're tasting the wine. So it hit me that most people were drinking wine with a cold, and then feeling stuck in their box and intimidated by some of the things that happen out there. How do we break this down? How do we transform this? Where's the pop? What's the place where we get to take people who are intimidated by wine or who stay in these boxes and transform it to such a degree that the kid in them is on cloud 9? How do we do that? So the answer became, get rid of the language of wine, and check this out. Imagine a taste paired to the words pretty and happy. Imagine a taste paired to the words pompous and over the top. None of those are the same flavor, right? So what we started doing, and now we really do it, is we write adjective-based descriptions to people, places, and things, and pair the wines so you could circle some of those adjectives when you taste the wine. It lets us pair wines to things you have a head or heart connection to, and it lets us trick you into trying wines that are vital choices for palate and planet. Magic, magic. So we've been doing this for years. This book, that Princess Bride thing I showed you, that's this. That's this story, that we've been doing. But this book is 10 years worth. I mean, it's insane. It's a lot of work.
Hamilton.
It's insanity. It's a lot of work. But my favorite is I don't know if you know Game of Thrones, but between season 7 and season 8, we were waiting way too long. And we did a flight for each season. But what happened was, because we were waiting so long between season 7 and season 8, we realized we could name or label 5 ways or five personas that each Jon Snow and Arya Stark had from seasons 1 through 7, and we could give each of them adjective-based descriptions. So we did this 10-wine flight of 5 wines paired to each character. Insane. Just insane. And then when you get people coming in and playing with this in mind, it's a different animal. I don't care that Providor's down the street. I have to send people there because they lose their minds. This is not the right shop for them. I just want a glass of Chardonnay. Right there. It's just a different animal. And so we did these flights for many, many years. Finally, I never wanted to do social media. I used to be a big Facebook guy because that's where I personally connected and told my stories. Instagram, I just couldn't handle another. I just couldn't do it. And so what I did for years is I tried to convince my staff to do social media. Guess what? It never happened. So people don't know us the way you would think for this kind of fun because we were not really getting it out there very well. Meanwhile, something happened in 2024. Actually, it started in 2023. So last year, we did a Bridgerton Queen Charlotte flight. And it was rock star. And the person who helped us with that, her name is Ray, and she's another wine wholesaler, Julian Sinclair. Ray helped us with those pairings and some of the writing in there in such a way that was so beautiful. I said to her, what do you want to pair to? We pair to adjectives. We're not limited by anything on the planet as long as you can use adjectives to describe it. So what would you like to see us do? I'm fine with just doing that. So she said, well, there's an author that has really incredible popularity right now that is in the same genre of a lot of the movie and TV shows that we had been pairing to. And that it could get some really good action if we tried it. And remember, I had all that bad reading history, right? So I'm like, sure, let's go ahead and do this. So we decided to do A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. And so Ray puts this together, and me being the not reader, one day I go, and this was in November. We decided the new book was coming out, the 3rd book of the Crescent City series was coming out the 3rd week in January, the last week in January. So we decided to do it right after that. So to do the ACOTAR flight basically for Valentine's, which this last year we called Galentine's, and I think next year we're calling Palentine's. So that came to light. And so I am in the bookstore on November 22nd, and I pick up the book, I sit on the floor, and I read 7 pages. I freaking love it. I walk out with the book.
You paid for it.
I paid for it. I paid for it, all right. Put it right next to my head, took the camera, took a picture, smiled, and then Googled some hashtags, or what do you do to promote it. And on Instagram, up to that point, our posts had anywhere, we had a lot of followers, but our posts only had anywhere from 7 to 25 likes. Occasionally, when we got married last year, we came out in our first dance in unicorn outfits, and that had 100 likes, you know. So anyway, so I go ahead and post this, and the next day, I have like a dozen messages in my inbox, people wanting reservations. And historically, we averaged over the years 20 to 25 flights per week. The busiest week ever was our 10-year anniversary when we did a Fancy Pants event, and we had 74 flights. So, dozen people, boom, okay. My beautiful wife, Megan, gets a reservation system up on the website, and I looked at the post the next morning, 101 likes and 67 messages or shares. And I'm like, Megan, we should do like an ad. We should take an ad on this. So we took the exact same post, duplicated it. By the time the event happened in the beginning of February, over 750 likes and over 975 messages and shares. I did a TikTok video because a customer came in. We weren't really doing TikTok. I had an employee who set a TikTok account up for us previously, but they don't work here anymore. And I did this video with a woman who shoots it for me and then posts it. And I'm on screen and I say, I love Sarah J. Maas. I am not your target market. Blah, blah, blah. Said a bunch of things. And then at the end, I screamed like a teenage girl after I showed a couple of bottles that we were pouring in the character names. 4,000 whatevers and 350 likes, and including somebody who's on Instagram, Amanda Wanders, who does this crazy, fabulous travel stuff. Man, she's cool. Either way, she or they, I don't know, saw the video and ended up, or my TikTok video, and it got on something called Book Talk. And
no.
And oh no. And so the next thing we know, she came on the first Sunday. It was a 2-week flight. She came on the first Sunday and does a really beautiful video. I mean, great job editing and voiceovering the video. Really good. Short, concise, beautiful, different images. And 40,000 views, over 3,000 likes. On the Thursday of the second week, I said to the full room in here, there were 2 other tables here and that one there. I said, how many of you guys are here because of Amanda's video? 6 tables raised their hand. 452 flights in 2 weeks. Welcome to Pairings. Jeffrey decided I can do social media. I just decided, I actually like it I get a little overwhelmed, but I like it, and it's like, it's so stupid to try to convince somebody to do something that you already have a sense for, and so I just have taken it on, and it's been going pretty well. So we've done a bunch of flights since. We did another Sarah J. Maas flight called Throne of Glass, which had another 280 people over 2 weeks. We did Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, which had over 250 people in 1 week. And, I got to say something about reading. So I read 1,800 pages from November 22nd to the end of January. And I've read Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. And now I'm reading a book called Divine Rivals. It's like, my wife said I needed a winter hobby because our garden is rad. I have my other passion project is this garden thing that's happened over the last 4 years. And when the garden season was over last year, she's like, you need a winter hobby. So I kind of took everything else that happened and Megan's comment and paired those together to get myself into the reading mode. So here I was the guy in the chair or the guy in the this or that reading, getting a night light and all this other stuff. So that's kind of how it went. And we put it out to, and the other thing that was fascinating was for the ACOTAR flight, and we've noticed in the last couple of years too, people really went crazy drinking during COVID. We did delivery and it was fantastic. And the business grew during that time, which is odd and crazy all at the same time. But business was, you could tell people really pulling back from drinking. There's been a lot more places opening in town. the regular business wasn't as, it was definitely losing steam. And January, we had the slowest month we've had since 2016. And February was the busiest month in the 11-year history of the shop. So just like, what is going on? So we did these forms where people who came to these flights, who could put in other things that they wanted us to see. And that's kind of helped us a lot with the planning. This group that's come in for Court of Thorns and Roses is mostly women, white women, in their 20s and early 30s. 98% of them have never been here before. Showing them our shortened version of the Key to the Castle tasting trick has been great. Mackenzie, who was this wonderful, wonderful new club member who first came to ACOTAR not as a wine person and brought a bunch of friends who were not wine people, has now joined our wine club, helped me with something recently, and a flight I'll tell you about in a minute, and more has just kept going. So it's really been incredible. And we have a lot of things planned. So the flight right now is going on for 2 weeks, and again, 450 flights over the 2 weeks. As we're recording this, we're right in the middle. This is like the halfway point. We just decided to add the first week of July as an extra week. So we are pairing wines to something I did not ever think I would possibly pair to. And I'm gonna say that is proof, because a customer gave me this friendship bracelet the other day because I now have a favorite song by Taylor Swift. So the flight that we're doing now is a wine paired to every Taylor Swift album. And the way we're insane with our handouts, we have a whole thing on how this came together, how we pair. On tour, Taylor is she painted her fingernail a different color for each. I'm a wine guy, right? Yeah. For each album. I just love this. And then, I feel like I'm 15. It's so much fun. I feel like I'm 15, 25, 35, 45, 55, and I'm 67. So it's like, it's wild. And then we have our tasting trick down here. So the tasting trick on the handout, we have a kindergarten and high school version on our website, and this is the preschool version. So it's really fun. And then for each era, for each album, we did this whole page. This is 2 months of work. So the part that I love, my favorite part, is our friend Mackenzie, who's a total Swiftie and got me on this, wrote this amazing part. It's making me cry again, because it's just like, it's so cool. We did all this research on, all this crazy nerdy fun, and they always start with pairing adjectives. So it always starts with adjectives. And then my piece that I love so much is when we come up with the pairings, to write why this wine in a digestible form for who I'm guessing is going to be sitting in these seats in here while that flight's going on. So, and then the nerdholism, pushed one step further is even stuff like, my wife and one of my wine slingers, Ton, who one day texted me, "Holy goddess, I love this shop." I know it's just crazy. We're actually pairing wines to all of Taylor Swift's romantic partners. Including one woman. There is a woman in there. Oh my God. And that's going to be July 22nd to 31st. So adjectives, man, there's no limit. You want to do a birthday party for your favorite friend, you send me 10 to 15 words to describe what you love about them, and we create this gorgeous, heartastic, custom 5-wine event paired to your friend. There's no limits to this. This is like body, mind, spirit wine. This is life. This is taking this to a life level where we're getting to use wine as the vehicle of communication, the alphabet, so to speak. And so I'm going to Edinburgh, Scotland this summer. And part of the trip, honestly, is prepping for 2 flights, because 2 weeks in September is going to be back to school with Harry Potter. And then in October, we're doing Outlander. So Outlander has this castle in the show called Lollybrock. And I, through a wonderful friend, Christine, I was able, her mom used to stay at this place called Parkhead House. And looks beautiful. I'm very excited to go. And they are outside of Edinburgh, so I'm not staying in Edinburgh. Not far, though. And then, but Lollybrook is a 10-minute walk from there. And I hear James and gives Outlander tours, so I think I'm going to take him up on that. So, and now we're plotting, things like, we have a crazy election coming. So, regardless, what's going to be a good distraction flight during there? And then how are we going to get people just dancing and being active? So I think we're going to do we did one of our forms where people can put in things that they want to do, and we're going to do Twilight. That's that. We did a survey with 3 things on there. Over 200 people voted. Twilight had 78% of the votes. Boom, boom. And then in December, I wanted to take it home a little bit, and to the idea of, for the first 2 weeks, like, since I'm really enjoying this romantasy category, and I'm liking it, and pairing to really fun things, and I've always loved fantasy and sci-fi and different things. It made me think, what's the original book, movie, TV thing around this genre? And also, what are the qualities I really want to help propagate? So what I thought about was, what flight could really speak to, the courage. The courage to get outside of the box, to adventure outside of the box, outside of the norm, outside of the safe zone, outside of the normal. What really speaks to pulling what you need in yourself forward to really own your truest self, to fight for what you care deepest about existing in the world, no matter what the cost. And what supports fellowship, in this case, of the Ring. So we'll have a Lord of the Rings flight and a Hobbit flight. So that'll be part of our deal. And then historically, for years, we've always done holiday movies for the week right before Christmas, because families come to town. And so, Christmas movies of various types. It's a Wonderful Life to, National Lampoons, blah, blah, blah. Welcome to the world of pairings.
Wow.
And we still do wine and food pairing.
Oh, there's wine here too.
There is. There's over 400. And most of them were organic grape growing, no yeast added winemaking without a single bottle of corporate wine. We only have a few areas where we can not spend on corporate things. We're kind of stuck with cars. We're stuck with gasoline. We're stuck with insurance. We're stuck with a lot of things. But I'm not stuck on where I buy my food. I'm not stuck on where I buy my beverages. So, the few dollars I have, I'd like them to support as many things as possible that will help keep my town unique. Mm-hmm. So I really like to be a stand for the things that keep our town authentic. Mm-hmm. Portland, when I first moved here, it was, it's changed a lot. I remember the very first time I came to Portland, back in the Shelley day, the Appalachian Trail time, when I first came to town, I was on 217. There was a traffic jam way down in the distance, and everybody the entire way had already gotten in one lane. As far as you could see, you couldn't even see down there. That wouldn't happen today, And part of it was, I think, people used to come to Portland, visit Portland. If they loved it, they moved to Portland. Now people just hear about it and they move here without necessarily knowing the town, so they bring their habits. And it just changes some of that. And, on that note, we live in Multnomah Village, which we adore, which still has some of that old Portland vibe in a really cool way. And now we're doing wine in the garden events this summer, which will be great, including a Sarah J. Moss one in August.
Okay, so you were talking earlier about first moving into the shop.
Yeah.
Tell me about setting this place up and the first thing you had to do when you got here. You mentioned there was something like the first thing you had to take care of when you got here into the wine shop.
Oh, yeah. So when I moved into this, so I didn't have a lot of money to start with. So that was the game. So what's happening with the money? But I made a very frivolous investment, which are the speakers and the disco ball. These are handmade speakers that I first saw at Heart Coffee over here. He's not in town anymore, and they're great. It's 11 years later, they're still fantastic. And then lucky enough, the receiver is the same receiver I found on the street 11 years ago. So, and then all these crazy things happened. Like there was the tenant above us, Josh, he was a minister in a interesting church around, and lovely guy, really loved wine. And Josh had a couple of kids and his wife, and they would come down. I'd always ask them about the music. They said, "Oh, we're fine," because we didn't do it very late in the evening. So, and super sweet. And then one day I run into him at over at Hard Coffee, and we just yak about life. And I was telling him some of the struggles that had happened, about a parent who had passed, about how we were starting this out of nothing and had no idea how it was going to go. We were just going to throw ourselves into it and see what happens. I want to read something to you. Can I read you? So I got this crazy little note from Josh, and his daughter comes in. We've been open a little over a month when this happens. So this is April of 2013, and Josh comes in with his daughter. His daughter's got a bag with donuts in it, and I said, "Donuts?" And then she hands me this, and she handed me a donut. "Hey, bro. It's been great getting to know you lately. Grateful for your courage launching a new business, and was really great bumping into you at coffee yesterday. I know it's been a tough year with your fiance's mom passing, the unexpected city regulation costs, and now construction slowing down business the next few weeks." Oh yeah, there was a lot of that. "We wanted to bless you with a gift of a free month's rent this month. It's through a thing we started at our church community a few years back we call Change for $1. Every Sunday we all put $1 in a basket. Then that week we take turns giving it to someone we know who's hurting, hit hard times, or could just use a little unexpected grace. And couldn't we all? Grateful for you, bro. Josh, Holly, and Aiden."
It's amazing.
When that happens, the courage gets bigger. It's like, keep going. Mm-hmm. Then another fun thing that happened was John from Luce and Navarre. One day, he came in a few times. I run into him at over coffee a lot. And he's a really interesting, cool guy. And I said, "Yeah, God, it's 5 years. I haven't made a penny. I don't know if we're ever going to make any money at this. Blah, blah, blah. I can't pay my taxes. I don't know how to do this." And he said, "Are you still having fun?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Why are you doing this?" And I said, "Because I love turning people on to fun, new ways of doing things." He said, "Do you want to do it more?" I said, "Yeah, because we're not allowed to think about money for at least another 2 years." There you go, man. I mean, you've got angels all over the place. So you just have to let yourself be open to it. We got too afraid during COVID, for sure. And different things. Actually, COVID helped my relationship with my wife actually a lot. We really kind of, we did really well. I never thought I could work with Megan in here, and we work great together. It's insane. It's awesome. It's wild. So you never know. Just because you get a program in your head doesn't mean it's getting you what you want. So I always think it's important to think about what's the why and to stay connected with the why. So we don't need to change our systems unless we change the why. And it was very interesting too. I had a wonderful business moment with somebody who helped me a lot, because when I started this, just putting it out there, I was, $77,000 in credit card debt with no room. I had $1,100 a month in interest. You're not supposed to be able to get out of that. And I don't have a single penny of credit card debt today, and great credit rating and all that stuff. So, it's where you put your head and heart and you focus, and you just let yourself go. So having the courage to sort of live that dream, is powerful, and hopefully, gets you where you love.
Question about wine for you.
Yeah.
Tell me about discovering wine at this point in your life. You obviously have a lot of wines here.
Discovering wine now.
Discovering, how do you keep tabs on new wines? How do you fill the store with new and exciting things?
I always taste. So tasting happens every week. So Wednesday's my big tasting day. So I'll say an average Wednesday I taste 20-ish wines, maybe touch more. So that keeps me in the loop. I also have like half a dozen people I really trust at this point who know my palate, know my history, and know where I go. So that really helps. That really helps ground that. But I'm pretty clear. You know, I get a lot of calls from wineries and stuff like that, and I say, you know, no yeast added winemaking and organic farming by practice. You know, and I prefer, when possible, to not have it be purchased fruit. You know, to have it be you working in a holistic farming system. And so, you know, there's not a ton of that, you know, so it eliminates a lot. And it has no bearing whatsoever on the quality of the wine. You know, there's great wine made by tons of people who are wonderful people whose wines I don't carry here, you know, because they don't meet the criteria for what I want to carry here. Doesn't make it right or wrong, just makes it the preference and the nature of the shop.
What have you not done that you want to do?
I want to write that astrology and wine pairing book. I'm really excited to do that. I have a friend who just told me that I can do it. He can transcribe voice memos if I just because I have the outline written. So if I just voice memo it and then do that, he'll help me get to that next phase. And where I was really resistant to an editor concept before, I am now like open-armed, complete embrace. You know, tell me how much it costs. I'll take however long I need to do to save the money for it, and away we'll go. And so that's something I would love to do, is write that. I don't know if I'd love to do this, but it pops in my head now and then. Well, I do want to travel more, because it's been a long time since I've traveled, really, and I do want to travel. I do want to travel a lot more. For my 65th birthday, I did a big road trip to Sedona, which was amazing, and had some friends meet us there. But I would like more worldly travel. So hopefully me and my wife can do that, maybe with some friends too. But I'm really, the way a lot of things have crystallized for me with certain aspects of what I've done, it'd be really interesting to see if I can continue that in what I'm about to say, which is, what would it look like for me to talk about transformation, getting outside of our cultural rules, and using wine as a vehicle for that, as a TED Talk, and creating something around that that would give me an ability to really speak in an empowering way, to share some of my life things and values with people that can help affect their lives. That's starting to make me cry. So that would be really, that would be an exciting road. Scary, but exciting. And then, but not too scary, just scary. The other thing I could see too is even trips, leading trips that would embrace some of that. Could be something that could, I would want that to evolve naturally though. And I'd really want to, it would be an interesting conversation with myself to see if I would want that to include a holistic bent, you know, in a bigger way, or not necessarily go down that road. You know, keep it more, not traditional vacation, but quasi-traditional vacation. And I just signed another 3-year lease on the shop. So we're not going anywhere right now.
Well, congratulations on that as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Last question for you, because you answered all my questions. Obviously answered all my questions. What's your best memory tied to wine?
I think one of my favorites, I have a few. One of my favorites was when I really turned my wife onto wine with Costerie Bourgogne Blanc 2004. So Costerie is a really hard producer to get. The wines are no longer reasonably priced. Back then it was about $150 for a bottle. It's probably now $350. It's so compelling. It's so layered. It's got so much life force and mystery and deliciousness and intoxication. The experience of her reaction to that is one of my favorites. From a traumatic point of view, when I spilled the wine on myself and I got my public speaking Jones on, that was definitely a really powerful moment. And I'd say overall, the more tender, heartastic moments with Henry Ponzio, he's my other dad. And I wish he was here. You know, I mean, he's on the planet. I wish he was here. He didn't get to make our wedding, unfortunately, but we talked, and we just talked not too long ago. So
Fantastic. All the questions that I have for you. Anything else that you want to talk about? Anything else we didn't talk about? Any questions I didn't ask that I should have?
What I want to say is I'm profoundly grateful for you creating the opportunity in this moment for me to share this and to be able to also hear myself go through this experience and have this experience. That is a big time wow. And it makes me really proud of what I've done and what I'm doing. So, and I'm really grateful for you guys doing this.
You're very welcome, and thank you for sharing with us and so openly, honestly, humorously.
Yeah.
Love it. Thank you so much for taking the time, sharing your story, sharing your space with us. We'll let you off the hook.
Thanks.
Thank you.